Also in 2017, there were a whole bunch of attacks. There are different resources in any cloud computing platform. And so very often a cloud computing platform will make available a virtual machine so that you can run your workloads in a segregated environment. Most platforms offer some sort of storage, and if you need to store a lot of data, Amazon provides what is called the S3 buckets. Simple storage service, that's why S3, simple, 3 S's, right? Simple storage service. And what happened in 2017 is that a whole bunch of organizations that were using Amazon's S3 bucket storage ended up getting exposed and compromised because the default settings for the storage buckets was publicly by default. And so if you look at this table that I show you right now, so let me share it for you. This table here, there is a whole bunch of entities that were breached. You know, defense contractors like Booz Allen Hamilton, U.S. Voter Records, Dow Jones and Company, Verizon Wireless, and also the Pentagon. In each of their cases, you had different data uploaded into the cloud, into these buckets. You can see from the table that the data was very sensitive. Battlefield imagery, personal data about almost 200 million American voters. You know, the Pentagon had terabytes of information from spying archives, and these data sets ended up being publicly accessible because the organizations did not configure their Amazon S3 buckets to be private and as locked down as they could have been. And in fact, later on this course, I will show an example of an S3 bucket configuration and talk about the public and private settings. I will make sure that, you know, since a lot of these incidents back in 2017, Amazon has taken some very, very significantly steps to help people, you know, make the right decisions, the right security by default configuration here. So if you log into Amazon, you go to the bucket service. It provides a user interface that looks like this, where you can create buckets. Think of a bucket as a folder, like a directory on a file system, or a folder on a Windows or a Mac, and you can create these buckets. So pretty much what I did in this simple example here is I created a bucket called LufSec. I created this bucket. As you can see, objects in the bucket can be public. This bucket is located in a data center in the West region in California and was created on this stage that you see. Wonderful. So there is a folder here now, and the next thing I'm gonna do is I click in the bucket, and what I did is I uploaded an image into the bucket. So in a similar way that we do in like Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, can be used to store files. The Amazon Simple Storage Service S3 also can be used to store files similarly. You can just go ahead and upload these files, you know, using your Amazon account. And so I uploaded a picture of myself, like a headshot. And then I took a next step of taking a look of the access settings for this bucket. And pretty much here it says that it gives you an option to block public access, and it says block all public access is off. So let me go ahead and ask a whole question here. Based on what you see on this interface, do you think this bucket is A, publicly accessible or only privately accessible? So if you go ahead and click on the file of the bucket here, you can see that I'm the owner when it was last modified. The size of the file, it is protected by server-side encryption, 256-bit encryption, and there is an interesting object URL here. Basically, once you upload a file to Amazon S3 service, you can, if things are configured right, you can access them publicly at this URL that they provide. I'm not quite sure what you answered on my quiz before because it is not a live course, right? But if you go ahead and click it, then it will actually bring up my picture and you ask the browser for this URL. So let's see how many people thought the picture was accessible versus not. So if you go back to a previous set on the Amazon S3, it says block all public access off. So what that means is that public access is on, so that the answer should be yes, it's accessible. When I ask these questions on a live event, it's getting better every time I ask the question. But even this year, the last time I asked it, the results was this. 70% of you got it right and understood that the bucket and the headshot was publicly accessible, but almost 30% of you thought it was only privately accessible. And so if we think about that and we look at all the people that might be using Amazon Web Services and might be using the user interface, 30% got it wrong. Now, I'm not sure Amazon, I'm sure that Amazon put a lot of research into these, and part of me wonder, if you look at this block, all public access off, you know, this is stated like a double negative. Another way to present this should be, you know, public access on or off. And Amazon did a good job because it is better right now than the previous time that I presented this. And you know, we didn't run the experiment here, but I wonder if we had rephrased this in that way, the results might have been a little better. You understood my point, right? So you can see how this can be interpreted incorrectly and how, as a result, one can have exposures and breaches due to Amazon buckets, say, being inadvertently accessible. And by the way, let me also mention that this is an issue that's not just specific to Amazon. It's with using any cloud service, and it's with any storage that you are potentially making publicly accessible to the internet. It is a very critical thing, very, very big difference between an on or an off here. And by the way, Amazon interface does allow one to specify much more detailed access policies. But while we are on this topic, let's now give the bucket and my headshot publicly accessible. Let's now use the Amazon interface to make it private. So what I did, I clicked edit and checked this box here saying block all public access. That seems pretty straightforward. And once I click block all public access, and there is, you know, more detailed option here as to if you want to do something more fine grained. I'm not going through all the details in this particular course here, but I click and block out public access. I hit save, and the interface tells me, please confirm that's what you want to do. I actually have to type the word confirm, and you can imagine if you have a significant application that says that has a lot of data that should be publicly accessible, let's say all the media in a social media application, if you make this privately inadvertently, you could basically ruin that application or that functionality and shut off everybody's picture on this social media profile, like all in one shot. So Amazon has no idea like what's the application behind it and what you were trying to do here. And this is why is asking you to confirm. So I think it asks you to confirm in a respect of whether or not you are blocking access, enabling access, but this is the key idea. After hitting confirm, it says that here. Publicly access settings were updated successfully, and you see that block publicly accessible. Public access is now on. What that means is public access is now disabled, and if when you try to go back to that same URL that I loaded and we were able to see the headshot, now we see that when we try to access the file on that particular URL, it says access denied because the entire bucket is now private. So that was a very short primer in the topic of Amazon S3 buckets and public-private settings. And we can see that this kind of settings are just kind of super critical.